What's going on, guys? This is Dave Heilman, aka Dynasty Dorks, and this is the SGPN Fantasy Football Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Always presented to you by WynnBET. WynnBET is now live in Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Louisiana, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Tennessee, and Virginia. From boosted same-game parlays to live in-game odds, WynnBET has what you need to win. Sign up today, bet $100, and get a $100 free bet at sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WynnBET. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WYNNBET to claim your free bet today. What's up, guys? We are here to talk some dynasty trades. Brad, how was your weekend, sir? It was that good? It was that good?
It was that good. I decided to stay on mute. Yeah, no, it was good. I actually drove down about an hour and a half south of you to see my folks for a few days. Met up with a couple guys that I play fantasy with for the last 3 years, but we never met in person, which was really cool. Met up with them, had a few beers, watched the early games. Got home today, did a little bit of leaf vacuuming to get my yard under control because I've got some giant oak trees that drop just a massive amount of leaves every year. So got that taken care of, which was nice. And then came in, poured me a glass of bourbon, got the kids bathed up and showered up and ready for bed. And now everybody's calm, and I'm ready to talk football, baby.
Yeah, man. This is a good game tonight, and I think if you're like me, there's a couple people out there that need something tonight. I got a few different plays that I'll be sweating out. Got anybody tonight that you're going to be sweating out?
No, so I everywhere that I had players, the margin is either I'm good, I'm safe, or it's so far I'm not going to make it. I've got a couple matchups where I was going between James Prochet and Jarvis Landry in a flex spot in a really deep 16-team league. But the lead is I'm down by about 12. So the likelihood that James Prochet is going to get me there is pretty minimal. But I'll keep my fingers crossed for maybe a deep touchdown or something like that.
Yeah, well, and you got Mark Andrews is most likely out, and Jarvis Landry is out.
That's correct, yeah.
So I got 3 props for everybody. Remember, you can go SGPN Fantasy, and if you deposit there, your first deposit will be matched over at Underdog. Isaiah Likely over 4 receptions, Alvin Kamara over 42.5 receiving yards, and Taysom Hill over 27.5 rushing yards. So today, the biggest news, knock on wood, it was a pretty good week as far as injuries. We had 6 teams not play, which helped. The biggest news would be Josh Allen's elbow. It didn't look like it didn't look serious, and he threw a bomb that was pretty accurate on the next play. But fantasy footballers talking about it. He had a similar injury in 2018. He missed 4 weeks. So that would be the biggest concern. So Matt Barkley is there. If you are on the waiver wire and you see one of these quarterbacks that got dropped, like, you might want to grab something just in case, because Josh Allen is the future. And if this team wants to be Super Bowl contenders, they're not going to go rush him out there if he's not ready to go. But it does seem like he's going to be able to play. Frank Reich. So we talked about it a couple weeks ago, and don't get me wrong, I think Frank Reich, the offensive line, everything has not been good. But I think Frank Reich was just not down with this whole Sam Ehlinger stuff. And I think he was ready to resign. He got fired. They decided to part ways, I think was the official statement from Irsay. When they talked about Sam Ehlinger going in there, Matt Ryan was hurt, and they could have went to Nick Foles. They were second in the division. They're currently second in the division, and they are still going in another direction. Don't get me wrong. They're still like 2 games back, 3 games back. But at the time they went to Sam Ehlinger, they were 3-3-1. This was not a team that was 0-6. So it's not good for any of your Colts players. They're looking to be a top 5 pick, and any of your Colts players are a downgrade. But what are your thoughts here on this situation, and how do you handle Michael Pittman moving forward in redraft and Jonathan Taylor in redraft?
Yeah, redraft, you have to try to get what you can out of them. It is pretty evident, right? We talked about this last week or 2 weeks ago when Sam Ehlinger was named the starting quarterback. We really feel like this is them purposefully trying to tank. I know I talked about this. This is eerily reminiscent of the season right before they drafted Andrew Luck, where they just purposefully tanked to make sure they could get that number 1 overall pick in the draft. And I'm aligned with you. I think Frank Reich said, absolutely not. We are not going to tank. This team is good enough that we can believe we've been a playoff contender the last 2 years. There's no reason we can't do it again outside of that unfortunate series of events with Carson Wentz the last 2 weeks of the regular season that knocked them out of playoff contention. That team in general was really thought of as a playoff caliber team. They were good all the way around the ball on offense and defense. And here we are again, eerily similar. They say, you know what, Frank, if you're not on board with this rebuild and this purposeful tank, we're moving on. And they did that. And it looks like Jeff Saturday is going to be the interim head coach, actually longtime Indianapolis Colt. So
yeah, so I think it was a good PR move or attempt at a PR move, because right now the Colts stink and everyone is they're just all over him. Pat McAfee was like, you can't cheer for this team right now, and he's right.
Yep.
I do think Reich he's had 2 top 10 offenses. I think Reich will get another shot, and I'd like to see what he can do with a young quarterback. He had a rough gig. He took the job as Andrew Luck retired.
Yep.
And so he did a pretty good job with it. And he also did the job with a GM that was not aggressive. This is a GM that likes to trade back. He's the guy in your startup draft that's trading back,
collecting all those 5th, 6th, and 7th round picks.
Yeah, productive struggle. And he's just got a bunch of B players. Like they just are not like, and now they're tanking and maybe going for some of these other players, but what they'll probably do is trade back again. I mean, they don't invest first round picks on any skill position players. And if they have an early pick, they'll trade it for a D tackle, or they'll trade back and get Rock Ya-Sin. I mean, it's just, it's boring and it's costing them. Like, Jonathan Taylor is a good player. Michael Pittman is a good player, but the offensive line now is not good. And they have not figured the quarterback position out. Every year it's a new quarterback for the team to get used to. So the Colts are in need for a reset. Frank Reich will go somewhere else, but let's talk about your teams and talk about what you're going to do. We got some trade targets coming up, and we're going to talk about quarterbacks. But before we do that, we're going to talk to you about WynnBET one more time. If you're ready to win money and boost your odds, WynnBET is now live in Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Louisiana, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Tennessee, and Virginia. We're bringing the excitement of Wynn Las Vegas to online sports betting and casino play. Exclusive rewards are right at your fingertips with Wynn Rewards at WynnBET. Be on the lookout for WynnBET Win Hour each Thursday from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern. During WynnBET Win Hour, marquee games of the week will have better odds on WynnBET, giving you a larger payout opportunity. Great promos, odds, and payouts are happening right now at WynnBET. From boosted same-game parlays to live in-game odds to every major sport, WynnBET has just what you need to win. Ready to play? Sign up today and receive a special offer. Bet $100 and win $100. There's so much to choose from. All you have to do is head over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WynnBET. Just so they know we sent you. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/WYNNBET. Claim your free bet today. Offer subject to change. Terms and conditions at WynnBET.com. Must be 21 or older and present in the state where playthrough WynnBET is available. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call 1-800-522-4700. So, Brad, it's this time of the year. Whether you are a rebuilder or a contender, moves are happening. And I'll give everybody one tip. If you want to see action in your league, you got to make that first move. That is the first thing that happens. If you make a move, anyone makes a move, everyone starts to reevaluate. and it'll if there's been no moves for 3 weeks, start it. And so give me a quarterback that I should trade for.
Yeah, so both of these guys are rebuild type situations for me in Dynasty. One of which I think is pretty clear. The other one, people may be on the other side of the fence as me, and we'll get to that one. But we're going to start with the easy one. That's Kenny Pickett, quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think a lot of people are down on him right now because of how that offense is playing, how Matt Canada is calling plays, and I think there's going to be a change in kind of how that team is put together. They're going to address the offensive line, which is going to really help. They moved on from Chase Claypool. They've got 2 really solid receivers in Deontay Johnson and George Pickens, the rookie, who's just going to continue to grow. They've got Pat Freiermuth in his second year and a really good back. He's just been super inefficient because of that offensive line and maybe a little bit of trying to make too much happen right now in Najee Harris. And I think he's just really, really cheap right now, Kenny Pickett, in those super flex leagues. He's only played 3 full games, right? Let's just get that out there. He came in at halftime for Mitch Trubisky in the first week that he played. Then he played a full week. Then he missed the second half of the game on an injury, and they put Mitch Trubisky back in. And then he played a couple games after that. Those 3 full games were not easy matchups. They played the Buffalo Bills. They played the Miami Dolphins, and they played the Miami Dolphins and the Philadelphia Eagles. Those are not good matchups for any quarterback, really. Philadelphia especially has been a really solid all-around defense. Buffalo, really solid defense. Miami is hit or miss, right? Depending on what week you're looking at, really. And when you're looking at a team that's got a bad offensive line and the inability to block, it made it really tough on him. But he's really shown out. And I think he's a guy that's going to get plenty of opportunity. He's a rookie quarterback in a situation. You've got 2 solid years minimum before they look to try to move on from him if he just doesn't turn into anything. And because of the price right now, I think he's absolutely a buy for you in a rebuild type situation.
Yeah, Kenny Pickett's been pretty good for fantasy. He's not been that great for reality as far as, the record and things like that. But he's aggressive. He throws the ball down the field. He's got a little bit of a rushing upside, not just in Fields by any means, but he does
178 yards just in Fields, you mean?
Yeah, he's not afraid to run the ball. And but he does, he plays a lot more aggressive than Trubisky, and that's why Trubisky lost the job and why he got the job. I mean, he has some good weapons out there with George Pickens, Deontay Johnson. They just got to fix that offensive line, and they should be in much better shape. I'm going to go with Jimmy Garoppolo. And so Jimmy Garoppolo, you can see right here, he has the number 1 strength of schedule the rest of the season and all the weapons they put around him. And you can go and try to buy Jimmy Garoppolo. And I have an article coming out about the 2023 quarterback, the quarterback free agency. And Jimmy Garoppolo appears to be a 1-year buy. He could easily be the quarterback for another team next year. There's a lot of teams that need quarterbacks, and there's not 10 to 12 rookies that are coming out. You could see this guy and the next guy that I'm going to talk about. But because of their age, their price is down. But Jimmy Garoppolo could be a cheaper guy that you can go and pick up. He's not maybe the ladies like him, but as far as fantasy football, he's not sexy. And he's got Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Kyle Shanahan. I mean, he's got all the weapons, and he plays against Arizona and Seattle and the Rams. Like the match, he's the only one with a 5-star matchup. So give me some Jimmy G. I think he's going to surprise some people. He's QB1 this year. He didn't even start the season out as a starter, and he's a QB1 on the season. You got another quarterback for us, Brad?
Yeah, I think the other guy may be you may see other people on either side of the fence on this individual, and that's going to be Daniel Jones, quarterback for the New York Giants. I think he's really been utilized really well in a New York Giants offense with a team that's playing very, really good football right now all the way around. Brian DeBall has really kind of unlocked his legs and started to use him more in the rushing attack. He's got some design rollouts for him, some design runs. He's really giving you a solid floor right now, really, from a rushing perspective. And I expect some things to start to kind of transition in the offseason when he finally looks at getting a wide receiver in there. They moved on from Kadarius Toney. They're definitely going to be moving on from Kenny Golladay. They brought in Wan'Dale Robinson, who looks like he's going to be a really solid player, but he's not an alpha. They need to bring in an alpha. There's some guys that are free agents that they might be looking at, or they'll address it through the draft. And I think that's something that Daniel Jones is going to benefit from. Now, you say, what about his contract, Brad? What about that? I still think that they look to lock him up for a 3-year contract. Maybe not a mega deal or anything like that, but I think they like what they see. They like the rushing upside. He's playing really good football right now. They're not asking him to throw the ball a ton. But he's performing really well, and they're winning football games with him. So I don't think they're going to look to change that up too much. They're going to look to add some weapons, and I think Danny Dimes may be a kind of low-key steal right now on some dynasty teams. You're muted, bud.
There's a pretty interesting little tool right here. I want to show you guys. If you go to Spot Track and you look up the free agents, and this article that I have coming out, you can see this as well. So, Brad, let me know if you can still see
we got
it.
Yep.
Can you still see the screen after it changes?
Yep.
See it now?
Yep.
So it gives you an idea of what a potential contract would be. So if you were to get just straight up franchise tagged, I think it's $36 million. So the Giants would get a 1-year, like $36 million contract, and they'd be fully guaranteed, but they would not have any long-term look and outlook. Right. This one, he would get a 3-year, $76 million contract, very similar to what Teddy Bridgewater got a couple years ago. Short-term deal, 19 mil average annual salary, which is very cheap for a starting quarterback, and that's something that they could do. And that doesn't mean they're going to, but that's something that you would look at as far as, if you were to sign Daniel Jones long-term.
Yeah, I mean, this guy is currently 9th in adjusted completion percentage in the entire NFL. He really is playing very well. He's playing within the confines of that Brian DeBall scheme. But we're seeing them play very safe as well because they've got Saquon who's playing really well. They're throwing kind of those shorter passes, and it's really producing well because our defense is able to kind of slow some guys down as well. And I do look for that to start to change a little bit if they add some players. So I think he's a really sneaky play in the long term.
And they say the similar about Jimmy Garoppolo, but actually quite a bit more.
Yeah.
4-year, $107 million contract is what they would project him to be, which would put him at the 14th highest player. He's actually the 12th highest quarterback right now. And then the next guy that I want to talk about, he's going to still be on this list, but you're going to have to scroll down, keep scrolling down, because he's not making a ton of money. And actually, they don't have a market value for my guy. And my guy is Geno Smith. And I talked about him. Always taking questions. Let's get to the questions, and then we'll go into that. I didn't see these guys' comments. Trade DK and Higbee for D-Hop. Yeah, I'm fine with that. I think that I don't think it's a huge upgrade, but Hopkins is playing really well. You do have to remember Marquise Brown is coming back, and if you don't have tight end depth, then I'm not making the trade. But Higbee, I know he skunked you yesterday. Hopefully you got some other options there. Trade Jacoby and Pitts or Waller for Amon-Ra. Well, that's one of my guys that I'm targeting later. Yes. If this is redraft, is this a redraft or a dynasty question? Dynasty would definitely change some things. And I'm not a big fan of Waller this year or Pitts this year. And so you trade Jacoby and get Amon-Ra, and you got to give up one of those guys. So if this is a dynasty question, Brad, would you still do the trade, or would you do the trade if it's redraft and dynasty?
I think it's pretty even from a dynasty perspective. If you're looking at Jacoby and it is redraft. Okay, so redraft, I'm keeping Pitts and I'm okay moving for Amon-Ra, but Jacoby Myers is kind of sneaky, to be honest with you. So if I'm going to do this, I'm doing Jacoby and Waller. I'm not going to give up Jacoby and Pitts for that. I just don't think Waller, even if he does get healthy, which I am questioning whether or not he's actually going to play the rest of the year almost at this point. I'm looking to try to move him on some name value and packaging with Jacoby, but I think there's still some upside with Pitts before I'd be looking to move that. And Jacoby Myers is a guy that, like I said, he's been underrated all season. He gets the targets. He's had some really solid games for you. And I look at him kind of in a redraft league, kind of on the same level as Amon-Ra, to be completely honest with you. So for that one, I'm okay doing it to get Amon-Ra, but not if it's with Pitts, only if it's with Waller. And
I'm totally fine. I'm totally fine with it. I know we always talk about the upside with Pitts. Like when is it going to happen? And Desmond Ridder is not going to unlock that for me. I know you got to get rid of, one of those guys or Higbee. For me, I'm totally fine with it. I like Jacoby Myers. Amon-Ra St. Brown has a much higher upside than Jacoby Myers. And so that's why I would do the trade. And
the DK,
I would move Waller because you don't know if he's going to play again.
Yeah, it would not shock me if he doesn't play the rest of the season. It really wouldn't. The DK one, I think I might be on the other end of the fence with you on that one. I think I'd rather have DK and Higbee. Higbee's just been a target monster. And the Rams in general looked really bad against a pretty tough Tampa Bay defense yesterday. I don't know that I would account that as like the norm for Higbee. I think he's going to go back to getting peppered with targets, to be completely honest. I don't think Van Jefferson is the reason that he's not getting those, this week. So I'm on the DK and Higbee side of that because of what you also said, right? And a guy we're going to talk about later on in Hollywood Brown, who was on pace for some serious numbers before Nuke came back. And unfortunately, we haven't got to see him play together. But
I will say this, look at DK and look at D-Hop, and have either of them had their bye yet? If you're looking for a trade, guys that have week 14, week 13 buys, especially if you're like on the brink of making the playoffs, you don't want to trade for those guys when you give away somebody that already had their bye. Like somebody offered me Barkley for Kamara. Barkley is on the bye. Kamara has a week 14 bye. So regardless, I would take Barkley based on like just the fact that I like Barkley more. But it's a factor, especially unless you're, 7-1 or 6-1. So we got a 10-man PPR. He's 7-2. Should I trade Justin Fields, DeAndre Swift, and T. Higgins for Justin Jefferson? Is this a one quarterback league? Other running backs are Chubb, Walker, and ETN. So he's pretty good at running back. Amon-Ra St. Brown, AJ Brown. He has Lamar Jackson as well. JJ Owner has Herbert. So, it's always good to know if the quarterbacks are a main piece that it's super flex. So it is super flex.
Yeah, I don't know if I could do that if it's super flex. Because one, we don't know who your other quarterback would be behind Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, who's your other quarterback? That'll help us out here, because if you have Justin Fields and Lamar Jackson,
one quarterback.
Oh, one quarterback. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, that makes a big difference. DeAndre Swift and T. Higgins.
That's a lot in a redraft league for Justin Jefferson.
But it's 10-man. That's why it's like it is. It's definitely a lot. You get Justin Jefferson, plus you get 2 roster spots. You can pick some people up. I'm gonna go ahead and do it. I think if you're gonna get Justin Jefferson, you're gonna have to pay a shit ton for him. And I'm so concerned about DeAndre Swift of how their usage is with him, that the value is not, for me, it's not what the namesake is. So I'll go ahead and do that trade and sign off on it. And you got to pick people up off free agency, and they're going to be added to the other side of this trade.
Yeah, I mean, you're not starting Fields over Jackson, so that's a bench player. At this point, you're not starting Swift over Chubb Walker or ETN, so that's a bench player. And to replace T. Higgins with Justin Jefferson, your starting lineup is 100% better at this point with that trade. It's just, for me, you got to think about the depth of your team as well, right? What bench players do you have to carry you through those bye weeks as well? Because that can be a challenge, right? The nice thing is Chubb's through his bye week. ETN's bye week is week 11. So you still have some bye weeks that you're going to have to kind of plan through, which is going to be the key, right? Maybe you get lucky and all of them are on a bye at 1 week, and you kind of have that, like that sacrificial week or whatnot. But that would be the only other question is like, am I going to be able to really get to where I want to be come playoff time?
Yep. No, that makes sense. And there's probably good streaming options in that, situation. You can always get Huntley there as some backup. But yeah, man, good luck.
Playing for him last year.
Go get Justin Jefferson. So back to it, where we're talking about quarterbacks. So my other quarterback was Geno Smith. And so Geno Smith is another player that he's 32. He could easily be on another contract next year. I would be, if you were to say who is going to be a starting quarterback next year, Geno Smith, Daniel Jones, or Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, these are all guys that they do have question marks, but they're all playing well enough that they've earned, thanks, Wavy. They've definitely earned the opportunity. And so, like, I had someone come into my inbox today. Hey, how much for Geno Smith? He's a one-year deal, and I don't really trust him. I'm like, oh, okay, you're setting the table to lowball me. No, I just want to know how much you want. I was like, well, I don't see him as a 1-year deal, so I'm not gonna take the third that you're about to offer me.
Yeah.
He goes, oh, and I'm like, you're gonna offer me a 3rd-round pick for Geno Smith, who is a top 7 fantasy quarterback right now, who's playing really, really well, and it's not just like a 2-week thing. Like Justin Fields played really well for 2 weeks. It looks really good, and he's getting better and better. But Geno Smith's been on fire every single week, and he's in a great division, just like we talked about when we talked about, the matchups. He's got a great end of the season matchup as well. He's got a 3 stars. It's a top 12 as far as the quarterback strength of schedule. So I'm going to go Geno. Let's move it along to running backs. Brad, what running backs should we be buying?
Yeah, so these ones I think again could be really useful in either a contending or you're trying to get some guys on the cheap based on what's happening. And the first one is going to be Josh Jacobs, running back for the Las Vegas Raiders, a young guy. People were really worried about him because the Raiders didn't pick up his 5th-year option. But this dude has balled out. He's looked rough, though, the last 2 weeks. But really, the last 2 weeks, the Raiders haven't looked great. They had a better game last week or yesterday. It still wasn't great, though, and they didn't utilize Josh Jacobs like they were in the weeks prior. So you can get him for a pretty good value, and he's a 24-year-old running back getting ready to get that second contract. And I'm telling you, that is the time to buy these guys. If you can get them before that second year or that second contract, you can move them immediately after that contract is signed for more than what you bought them for prior to. And I think these last 2 weeks, people are already down on him. You can use that fact that they didn't pick up his 5th-year option as another individual that you might be able, hey, here's why you should get rid of this guy now, especially if they're not a contending type team. And I think Josh Jacobs is a guy that you should go take a look at.
Yeah, I put Josh Jacobs. I sent it over to you and Maddie and said, hey, am I too high on Josh Jacobs in my dynasty rankings? But, he's 25 years old. Don't look at how many kids he has and think about his age. I think he's got about 7 or 8 kids now. He's on the Cromartie track. But he's played really, really well this year. And what they've done wrong is they've put Amir Abdullah in there on 3rd downs. And that's where it's the money down.
Yep.
Like you see a 3-point contest, you want to hit the money ball and you want those 3rd downs. And Josh Jacobs has just, I don't know if he's dealing with an injury or they came back off the bye and said, let's do this. And the offense has been really bad since. Yep. So Josh McDaniels is a smart guy. He'll figure it out.
Is he though? Is he
He's had some.
though? I'm
I
starting
know
to
he's had
question.
Tom. I know he's had Tom Brady, but he's had good offenses with and without Tom Brady. And he was Sean Marino was an absolute stud in the Broncos. No Tom
Yep.
Brady, no Bill Belichick. He's had stud running backs before, and Josh Jacobs was a top 3 running back before the last couple weeks. So
Yep.
I'm totally agreeing with that. As far as Josh Jacobs, we see it right here, Dave Montgomery and Khalil Herbert. And I know yesterday was really tough because you had Justin Fields as RB1 for the other than Joe Mixon. And so Dave Montgomery, I know you're going to talk about him. I'm talking about Khalil Herbert. And so Khalil Herbert is someone that you can get, and because he's not starting running back, he has some appeal as far as a price point. And so when you look at David Montgomery and Khalil Herbert, they have the best schedule as far as running backs. David Montgomery's a free agent next year, and Khalil Herbert could be in line for more work if David Montgomery were to be moved. And that we've seen him in this offense. David Montgomery's looked good. Khalil Herbert's looked better. And I feel like there's a lot of people that are in agreement of seeing that. And when it comes down to running backs, teams just don't pay running backs. And they didn't pay their middle linebacker, Roquan Smith. I don't think they're going to pay a running back. I think they're going to run with Khalil Herbert and then draft somebody. So I think Khalil Herbert is someone that you can get in as a throw-in on trades, or a late second, or a couple of thirds, something like that, can go get Khalil Herbert. I got him the other day as a throw-in in a trade, on a couple of different trades, and I'm just trying to scoop him up wherever I can. And the last couple of weeks have been down. You can buy them even cheaper.
Yeah, I mean, I just moved in a rebuild. Well, I'm not a rebuild. I'm 4-4, and I just don't think my team is quite to the point where I could really be a true competitor. I think I could get into the playoffs, but not a team that could really, squeak out a win and get a belt. So I moved Aaron Jones, and you probably can't do this now, but this is the type of move that you should be looking at doing to get Khalil Herbert. I moved Aaron Jones for a first plus Khalil Herbert. And I think that's how you kind of make that move. Because if I'm the Khalil Herbert owner and somebody offers me 2/3, I'm not going to take that. The upside is not there. The upside is there with Khalil Herbert. So you need to get him as kind of that plus on a trade throw in. Like, you know what? I just need a little bit more than a first for this player. Throw me Khalil Herbert. He's a backup. He's a high value handcuff, if you want to look at it that way. Throw him in there. He's the equivalent of a second or a couple thirds, and it makes it work. And you need to look at getting players that way, especially if they have upside. Many times you're going to overpay if you're looking at offering a pick only for him, unless that team is just in shambles.
Well, and you can, if you're a rebuilding team, you could go and throw a veteran like a Cordero Patterson and get Herbert back, something like that, or like a veteran receiver, Adam Thielen type of a player, and get Herbert back versus just a pick straight up. And some people are really, really into the picks, especially if it's they don't have a lot, and you might be able to get Herbert that way. Big fan of the show. Any buy low injury players for next year? We're talking about it now. I mean, of course, any players that are injured are kind of buy low. So Jamar Chase, Jonathan Taylor. They're buys. I wouldn't say low. Low in consideration of what their normal price point is. But a player that that you could buy the dip on right now is Jonathan Taylor. And Jonathan Taylor is somebody that used to cost 3, 4 firsts. Javonte Williams used to cost 3 or 4 firsts. Both those players are players that you can buy low on. And J.K. Dobbins, and those are injured players, and you're paying for, the reason it's a discount is you're buying risk.
Yep. I mean, Breece Hall's another one you got to throw in there, right? Breece Hall, a guy who was going to cost you multiple firsts before he got hurt. You could probably get for a mid to late first at this point if he happens to be on a team that is looking to kind of rebuild in general and get rid of risk. Or that he's on a contending team and you say, hey, let me throw you a player and a pick or something like that. I really think he's probably a guy that you can get fairly cheap, considering what his price was before he got hurt. And then there's that slew of wide receivers that are out there too that are hurt right now, but they'll likely be back before the end of the season and may not necessarily be able to contribute to your team this year, but I think could contribute next year with guys like Hollywood Brown or Mike Williams. You mentioned Jamar Chase. These guys that are likely out another 3 to 4 weeks, and unless you're already in the playoffs, they're really probably not going to help you at this point.
Yeah, and anyone that is a contender is trying to make the playoffs, like these guys that can't help them right now, you can take advantage. And buy low is always a hard term because you throw out a buy low article and people are like, these aren't buy lows. I'm like, okay, this isn't the Goodwill rack, but these are, maybe it's not a Black Friday deal, but you can go get Jamar Chase for a reasonable price right now. You can get Jonathan Taylor for a reasonable price right now, and it's lower than what it's going to be in 3 weeks whenever they return. Same with DeAndre Swift. I love you through Mike Williams out there. And then as far as a tight end, we saw Daniel Bellinger was playing really well. You can get him pretty cheap.
Irv Smith might be, he's a guy we're going to talk about later. He's another guy that they just replaced him, right? He's a free agent next season. He's a pretty athletic guy that is going to be back before the end of the season at a minimum. And I think Minnesota might try to, show him a little bit. Not obviously he's not taking TJ Hawkinson off the field right now, but I think he's a guy who could be you get him dirt cheap right now. Like a single third would probably get it done. Maybe even a fourth if you go that deep in, dynasty rookie drafts.
TJ Hawkinson absolutely killed his. And then you look at guys like Michael Pittman. He's in a situation where the team is in shambles. DJ Moore's back on the buy low. We told you to sell high last week. He's back on the buy low.
Don't be knocking on Baker. He looked good in the second half, baby.
Well, and so one thing that this taught me was the reason you invest in good offenses is so you don't have the situation. Like if you have Michael Pittman and you invested in this offense, or DJ Moore and you invested in this offense, you don't have this problem if the quarterback is secure.
Yep.
And so the same thing with the Atlanta Falcons. We'll talk about their guys. These quarterbacks are dragging down the other guys. And if anyone's at risk of being benched, that is definitely something you need to think about when you are drafting pass catchers, because Michael Pittman's value just DJ Moore's value just Yep. And so and these other guys, it's totally different. So big fan of the Rock. I love the Yavi. So what other running back do you have for us?
Yeah, so the other one is the other half of that backfield that you had at the top of the screen there. You talked about Khalil Herbert. Mine is David Montgomery, currently the lead, quotations, running back for the Chicago Bears. But look, this dude is purely price point for me right now, and this is in a contending situation or maybe even a rebuild. You can move a singular second-round pick mid to late for David Montgomery right now. I've done it twice in the last 2 weeks, and you might even be able to get him a little bit cheaper than that now that he had another kind of dud week this week with Justin Fields getting 178 rushing yards. It's just, he's another guy, 24 years old, going into his second contract, likely going to get a little bit of a payday and get some opportunities somewhere. And the price point is just too good to pass up right now. He's still going to be getting some volume. You saw the strength of schedule for that running back being top of the list for the Chicago Bears. And that's the kind of guy that you want to go buy right now. A guy that is super low in value, but likely is going to have an uptick because of the matchup, and also going to have an uptick because of getting a new contract on a new team. And you'll be able to move him for even more than that in the offseason if you don't want to hold on to him. So I think David Montgomery is an absolute buy with the situation that you're looking at in Chicago in regards to strength of schedule and the fact that he's going to get that contract.
Yeah, so I want to go down the strength of schedule. So these are the top 10. You have the Bears, the Titans, the Jaguars, the Cowboys, Washington, the New York Giants, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Buffalo Bills, Detroit Lions, Carolina Panthers. Also have Minnesota and Houston. So looking at this, like, make sure you're handcuffing. If you have Ezekiel Elliott, go and get Tony Pollard. Like, don't be afraid to trade a 3rd-round pick to, secure your top back. And so, like, not all situations are equal, but if you have Dalvin Cook and don't have Alexander Madison, like, if you lose Dalvin Cook in the playoffs, you're going to need Madison. And the last thing you want to do is face him in the playoffs because you didn't secure that pick. You see what Jamal Williams' value is. Jamal Williams, you could have got him for a 3rd-round pick earlier in the year when Swift was killing it. Now he's going to cost you a 2nd.
Yep. And you talked about not all of them being treated equally. Go take a look at my Snapshot article for last week because I focused on the running backs and the handcuffs to pay attention to and used a few examples from previous seasons where you had guys miss some significant time or a game critical in the playoffs, and their backup absolutely exploded and gave you a week winning type week. So make sure you go check that out, and it'll break all those down for you.
All right, and then the next guy I wanted to bring up is Isaiah Spiller. Speaking of handcuffs, Isaiah Spiller finally starting to see some action. It looks like he's overtaken that second fiddle to Austin, just over Sonny Michel to Austin Eckler. Just on a few carries yesterday at almost 30 yards, looked pretty efficient, about 5 yards a carry. And then Joshua Kelly as well. Again, if you have Austin Eckler, this is a guy that is a main piece on your team. And you can go get Isaiah Spiller or Joshua Kelly for virtually nothing. And I guarantee there's a roster spot of someone that you need to get rid of Will Fuller or somebody on that bench to go make a roster spot. Go ahead and do it. These guys could be league winners. And then I will throw a bonus one, and that's Jeff Wilson. Jeff Wilson outsnapped Raheem Mostert. We told you last week to go pick him up. We saw it. He outtouched Mostert, and he looked good. Jeff Wilson hit the ground running. So any of the running backs before we go to the receivers?
No, I'm good. I'm ready.
All right, let's go to the receivers. Brad, who's a receiver that I should be buying?
Yeah, so for me, I'm looking at a guy like Marquise Brown right now. He's eligible to come off the IR next week. He says he's ready, but it does sound, the rumblings are kind of like, they really want to hold him out until their bye week. I don't know if they can do that. They might fall out of contention before that. So they really need to think, hey, Hollywood, if you're really right, if you're good, let's get the medical clearance in. And this dude was on pace for an absolute smash season before DeAndre Hopkins came back. The last 4 games, 3 of those, he was a top 12 wide receiver. That is absolute monster numbers. And I think they're missing that piece of the offense. They're missing that down the field threat right now. They've got Hopkins, who's crushing those mid routes and underneath. They've got Zach Ertz, who's really eating up the middle of the field. They need that stretch target, that guy that's going to stretch the defense out, spread them out a little bit and be able to beat them. And he's a fast guy as well. We've seen him produce in that long range game before. And I just think he's going to be a smash play moving on. When he comes back in, I think the volume is going to be there for him and DeAndre Hopkins and Zach Ertz. And really, Cliff Kingsbury's got to get it figured out because I think his head's kind of on the chopping block, to be honest, if he doesn't. So I think Hollywood's a guy you can get pretty cheap right now. I've seen 2 trades in Trade Finders where I couldn't believe it. He went for Khalil Herbert and Chase Claypool for Marquise Brown. I think that's a smash regardless of your situation. If you're looking to rebuild, he's only 25 years old, right? He's not old by any shape of the imagination. And if you're a rebuild or if you're a contending team, he's a guy that's going to be back in the playoffs and be able to be played. And then the other one is a clear rebuild versus contender, which was Deonta Foreman and a third for Hollywood Brown. I would take Hollywood in both of those situations, regardless of where my team was at. I think he's just the better play long-term from a dynasty perspective.
Yeah, I like that. I like that as, especially the fact that of his age, he likely gets re-signed with that team. I'm going to go with Mike Williams. Again, you don't have to always buy low or buy these pieces for 1 year. Mike Williams is on a contract. He's on a little 3-year contract. You got Justin Herbert there. Mike Williams has the second best schedule, as you can see on the screen. You want to play the Raiders. You want to play the Chiefs. And Mike Williams is, when he's out there, he's been absolutely dominant. He's had a really good season up until this injury. And so I do think that, Mike Williams will be able to unlock some of the things that you're missing right now in Justin Herbert, who is someone that you can, I wouldn't say buy low, but Justin Herbert's another player that you could go and make an offer on. I mean, in redraft, he's a normal quarterback. He's a streaming quarterback, and he's someone you can go pick up for the championship run and see what you can do, as long as you can, you have someone else that can play these next few weeks until he gets his boys back, because he's had no Allen, he's got no Williams, and no Slater.
Yep.
Rashawn Slater's out as well. So what's your other receiver?
Yeah, so this is a little bit of a homer pick, but he's really starting to come on, and that's Donovan Peoples-Jones, wide receiver for the Cleveland Browns. This dude, 4 out of the last 5 games, has had 70-plus receiving yards. Cleveland Browns have really started to be a multi-dimensional team. They're a team that leans on the run to set up the pass, and it's really working well for them. Their offense has produced very well here as of late, and I expect that to continue when Deshaun Watson comes in. I don't think anybody's going to argue that Jacoby Brissett's a better thrower or quarterback than Deshaun Watson. And I think when he comes in, there's going to be some rough spots, but Deshaun Watson is going to produce. And I think Donovan Peoples-Jones, at 23 years old, he's still locked in for next year on his rookie deal with the Cleveland Browns. He is the number 2 there, and he's going to produce some numbers. He hasn't had the touchdown in the last 4 weeks, which I think is, if you add a touchdown here or there, his season's totally different. I think people start talking a little bit differently about him, but he's low key under the radar right now. He's getting the targets, he's getting the yardage, and he's really looking good right now. So, and you can get him extremely cheap.
Yeah, no, I like that. And for me, I'll throw 2 bonus ones in there, and that's Calvin Ridley and that's Drake London, because those are guys that I don't think are going to be able to help you much this year. But those are guys that are producers for next year. But my guy is going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown. And so I know there was a little disappointment yesterday with Amon-Ra St. Brown. People are concerned with Jameson Williams coming back. Dan Campbell is not going to be the head coach of the Detroit Lions next year. No, he's not going to be the head coach. We can put a bet on it right now. We can put
we might need to do that.
Put a bet on it right now. We know that you feel a lot stronger about Jared Goff than I do.
Yep.
So I don't think Dan Campbell is going to be in that position next year, and I don't know if Jared Goff is going to be in that position much longer. I think he'll be there next year, but I think he could be in a lame duck situation next year if they draft somebody high, or they could turn to one of these free agents if there is a change at the head coach position. With Amon-Ra St. Brown, we've seen the upside. He was injured. He came back. He played a handful of snaps. Then he had that bogus concussion protocol. He didn't have a concussion, but he wasn't able to play after he got injured on
protocol, man.
Not even injured. He got ruled out after one play. So I think, Amon-Ra St. Brown coming back from the injury, people are going to forget how good he was, and people weren't necessarily sold. I had a guy named Hitman going in trying to trade a 2024 first for Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I said, no, thank you, sir. People are going to send you buy low offers, which tells me that people think that his market is down, and if I can go get him for cheap, I will. This guy is a stud, and he's young. He's going to be a good piece on this offense for a long time. Let's go to the tight ends. What tight ends do you got for us?
Yeah, so another Cleveland Brown that, we had, who was it? Swavey ask about the injury. No, it was Rock Bottom ask about buy low injury guys. And David Njoku's on that list for me from the tight end position. I think this is a guy who you saw, he got the contract in the offseason. You saw he was really a focal point of that offense and really produced for your fantasy team early on in the season until he took that high ankle sprain a couple weeks ago. It does look like he's going to be back for the playoffs, which, for your fantasy playoffs, not the Browns playoffs. I'm not going to get into that conversation right now, but I do think this is a guy you can go get pretty cheap right now. He's got that ankle sprain, and they may look at it as a flash in the pan, right? But I think this is a long-term situation. They showed that they want him to be a kind of centerpiece of the offense. And I think he's a guy you should be looking at from a rebuild type situation, because tight end is very difficult right now. It's very difficult. People are going to start aging out, and you're going to have new youth coming in. And I think David Njoku is one of those guys that's going to start to supplant himself into the top 10 type tight end conversation as we move forward.
Yeah. And David Njoku was a big sleeper coming out on this offense. It's going to be interesting. The December 4th, Deshaun Watson will play. He does get the Houston Texans on his first week back. Cleveland is not out of the playoffs. And they won the other day, which we talked about in the trade deadline stuff. They did win, and that could factor into why Kareem Hunt was not traded as well.
Yep.
Njoku is an athletic guy. I mean, and people forget it does take a few years for these tight ends to cook. Everyone is, has high expectations for these guys. And it takes a little while. Almost every single one of the top tight ends, it took at least 2 years. I mean, Mark Andrews was pretty good pretty early, but I mean, you have to go back to Rob Gronkowski and Jeremy Shockey to see these huge fantasy seasons. That's 20 years ago. Kyle Pitts had 1,000-yard season last year, and he had 1 touchdown. And so he left a whole lot of fantasy points on the table. And obviously this year he's being disappointing, but he's still just 21 years old. And so I'm saying you can go get Kyle Pitts right now. And it's another head coach that I'm calling for it. Arthur Smith is not going to be the head coach much longer there. I know that team recently was in the top of the division. That's not going to be the case for the rest of the year. And Marcus Mariota is absolutely holding them back. So I saw a stat. A.J. Brown's first 8 games, he had 8.9 fantasy points per game with Marcus Mariota. Drake London, his first 8 games, has 8.9 fantasy points with Marcus Mariota. And guess who is the offensive coordinator for both?
Good old Arthur Smith.
Good old Arthur. And so Arthur Smith is not going to be there that much longer. Drake London's a pick. Kyle Pitts is a pickup. Kyle Pitts was wide open yesterday several times. Mariota just could not get it to him.
Yep.
And so you're not going to buy cheap, but you think about it. If I said, Brad, I'm going to give you a mid-first next year for Kyle Pitts, you'd at least think about it.
Yep.
If I said you're a contender, only thing you need is a tight end right now, I'm going to trade you T.J. Hawkinson for Kyle Pitts. Would you think about it?
I would.
And so, Dallas,
especially after 6 for 70 in his first game with the Vikings,
he looked great. Yep. Played on 90% of the snaps.
Yep.
Then you got, then you also have, not only the age gap, but there's going to be a change of quarterback. I think they could bring in somebody next year in free agency or draft somebody. We'll see where they are in the draft to see what they can actually do. But I'm going to go with Kyle Pitts there. And then what's your other last tight end?
Yeah, my last one is a guy I already kind of mentioned, and that's Irv Smith Jr. just going on the IR. The Minnesota Vikings trading for TJ Hawkinson a couple, week and a half or so ago, looking like a stud out there already. Irv Smith is an unrestricted free agent going into the 2023 season, and you can get him in Deion Jackson straight up, Kenyon Drake straight up, Robert Tonyan straight up. Like, I'm taking all of these, right? The thing that people need to realize in a rebuild is you have to take your shots. You have to. You're going to miss on some. You're going to hit on some. And Irv Smith, when I've got Kenyon Drake, who's 28, he was literally untradeable at the beginning of the season. And now he's got a little bit of trade value. You need to get rid of him for any upside play that you can. And I think Irv Smith is a good upside play at the tight end position. He's going to get signed. He's too athletic to not, right? We see guys like OJ Howard, after the terrible seasons he had in Tampa Bay and injury issues that he had, get signed in Houston, come in the first week and score a touchdown, right? I'm not telling you that's what you're going to get in Irv Smith, whether better or worse, but there's an upside there that I think you should take a shot on when this is the price point for him right now.
Yep. And this isn't really the buy low show. This is players you should buy.
Yep.
And as Irv Smith's a buy low, Greg Dulcich and Cade Otton are players you should buy.
Yep.
And you might have to pay up, but you're not going to have to pay a first round pick for either of these guys. But if you were to get, let's say you got Greg Dulcich for a second round pick or a second round pick plus Irv Smith.
Yep.
I'm taking that all day.
Absolutely.
And I'm hoping that I can have this tight end position figured out for the next couple of years. And Cade Otton, he's becoming a favorite target of Brady. He looks good. And, when I'm looking at the tight ends and I'm thinking about like what tight ends are hitting the NFL and doing well, Cade Otton, just like George Kittle and some of these other guys, is blocking tight end first. And so like, tight ends have a difficult time transitioning to the NFL because they have to go. They're basically like they have like three jobs. They got to go to the offensive line meeting, they got to go to the receiver meeting, and they also got to go to the tight end meeting. And so like you're trying to figure out what all the offensive line calls are. You're trying to do all that. You're trying to figure out all the checks and stuff for the receivers. And oh yeah, by the way, you got to play tight end too. And by the way, you're gonna be blocking Von Miller. So it's it is a absolute tough job, and that's why these guys like David Njoku and Gerald Everett and some of it take a while to cook. And so like guys like George Kittle, they knew how to block. Mark Andrews knew how to block. They hit the ground running because they didn't have to worry about that other stuff. And like there's a lot of tight ends out there that aren't really tight ends. And that's why they don't transition well into the NFL. But Cade Otton, Greg Dulcich, if I can get them for a second round pick and not worry about it, and are going to throw in on a trade, with some of these bigger names, like I think that's very valuable to get a tight end that is someone you could play. And then the last tip on this one, don't forget about like your roster construction and your league settings. If you have 2 taxi squad spots and you have 13 draft picks, the math just does not check out. And so you may not need another draft pick. Yep. So go trade that bottom feeder roster clog and take a shot on somebody with high draft capital and talent like an Irv Smith or an Njoku or a DPJ, any of these
Chase
guys.
Claypool. Tony.
Or combine them. You know what, Brad? Hey, I noticed you don't have any draft picks this year. I want, Greg Dulcich off your squad. And I know that I want to get a second for him. And you're like, no, I'll throw you a couple thirds just to get the deal done.
Yep.
And like use the draft capital if you have to. I don't give a shit what the trade chart says. It says you won. Cool. There you go.
That's right.
So that's my last tip on that.
Yeah, I think there's one more candidate I'd be interested in, and I don't know that you can really look at it just yet, but I think TJ, you talked about tight ends and needing to go to that offensive line meeting. TJ Hawkinson was highly touted and as high of a draft pick as he was for the Detroit Lions, because not only is he really good at catching the football, he is an excellent inline blocker. And I think the Minnesota Vikings offensive line could use that help. And I think Dalvin Cook is going to absolutely smash this back half of the season with that addition to the blocking scheme once he gets really kind of integrated into it. I don't expect it week 1. No. So Dalvin Cook might be another guy that, and I mean, he's RB12, so it's not like you're getting him cheap, but he's probably a guy that is affordable. Whereas beforehand, he was not affordable. right?
Yeah.
He just wasn't, because there's name value, there's name recognition, and he's been a top 10 running back for a couple years now at this point. So I think he's another guy. And you talk about Alexander Madison, that we're going to start to really see some benefits in the rushing game for the Minnesota Vikings, who are still only a one-loss team. I really like the Vikings at this point. I really do.
Hey, Kirk Cousins is my boy. He looked like he was having a ton of fun yesterday, and looks like Kirk Cousins has been hitting the weights. He didn't necessarily have the dad bod.
Taking that shirt off, baby.
So don't forget about the SGPN merch store. Get your holiday shopping done early at the SGPN merch store. SGPN gear is the perfect stocking stuffer for the D-Gen in your life, or whether that's yourself, your wife, or anybody else. I want to make sure that I am rocking the SGPN gear, and you guys can as well. Plus, from now until Thanksgiving, you get 10% off when you use promo code DallasSucks! !! That I like that. Big old smile. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com. Promo code DallasSucks! No better way to end the show than Dallas Sucks.
Yeah, I'll tell you right now, these shirts that they've got are, the nerds, for instance. They talk about how comfortable their shirts are. I promise you they ain't going to hold a candle to some of these nice T-shirts that they got. I got one, my nice blue one. It says SGB and Fantasy Football on it. Super comfortable. And then the coffee cup is that nice. I like a nice heavy coffee cup. I don't want that cheap shit or it chips when you put it in the dishwasher, or you barely hit it on the counter and it chips. They're nice, heavy duty 12-ounce coffee cups. They're beautiful. You should check them out if you're a coffee lover like I am.
I like the hat you had on Monday.
My green one, my SGP hat. Yeah, I got a little bit of everything, man. You got a rep.
All right, man. Well, hey, I'll see you on Thursday. Everybody, good luck this season.
Cheers.